Being in a position whereby I upload with relative sparsity at this particular juncture of the Chosen Chimp saga, and I can only apologise for that, it's important to me that I really make these videos count. For that, I need a good Doctor Who thing to cover, and Eco Azal himself, that somebody on Patreon, distinguished follower, £1 a month, put in a request for the big one. Well, I consider it the big one at least. In case some of you are bored with me waffling about my childhood relationship with Doctor Who, I'll keep it brief. 1972's The Sea Devils was repeated on BBC Two in the early 90s, and I recorded it on VHS cassette. I watched it more times than I swung on tyres and shoved bananas up my nose, and that's a lot. I love it. In terms of high quality classic Doctor Who programming, I consider it to be one of the finest examples of everything but the kitchen sink, both in production and storytelling. To make that point even clearer, The Sea Devils is just one of the best. And by TV standards, pretty epic. A very special level of ambition and effort gone into the entire spectacle. Costumes, props, stunts, action, locations. The Sea Devils was water-based Doctor Who like it had never been done before, and had actual assistance from the Ministry of Defence and the Royal Navy for settings, equipment and even extras in the show. Plus, the Havoc stunt team, which made serviceable contributions in Series 7 and 8, chipped in for one final time, and well, it's pretty clear to me that they saved the best until last. The Sea Devils had models so authentic that the MOD inquired to check exactly how the production team's submarine was so similar to their actual real-life nuclear submarine. The answer? Coincidence. Suffice to say that visually, The Sea Devils is quite literally the bomb. Same goes for the narrative too. Written by Malcolm Hook, who served in the Navy himself, wrote other classic Doctor Who stories such as War Games and Colony in Space. Sea Devils is distinctively the work of a guy who enjoyed political subtext, and touching on the folly of mankind and his insatiable appetite for war and conflict. And yes, of course, he also wrote the Silurians, also known as Doctor Who and Doctor Who and the Silurians, to which The Sea Devils is a direct sequel. For what it's worth, the continuity between the two stories is bang on the money. You see, old Cybermen stories? It's not hard. The Sea Devils repeats many of the themes of the Silurians, sans the whole thing with the virus, but on a grander scale and bulked out marvellously with the inclusion of this diabolical heel. The other essential and glorious component to the storytelling of this adventure. Look at him smiling there like he's just eaten some really nice Stilton. From the Master's perspective, The Sea Devils isn't so much a follow-up to the Silurians, but a sequel to the Demons, which, as we all remember, ended in this heart-stopping, adrenaline-fueled chase scene. Series 8 of classic Doctor Who was wall-to-wall Master, but Series 9 is a little more sparse in terms of his involvement, and in the case of this story, less is definitely more, with this character, at least for the first episode, showing just that little bit more depth, which we will cover as we go. The plot flows with adept smoothness from one story arc to another, as is the great tradition of good quality classic Doctor Who, with the first half trickle-feeding you with mysteries, jump scares and other such delicacies, before culminating in a finale that's explosive in every sense of the word. Naturally, there is that little bit of daftness, part of the charm, and maybe just a few too many incidents of the same people being held captive over and over and over, but these are all minor gripes, distinguished followers. At no point are you likely to feel bored in this one, and the only thing that I think falls a tiny bit flat is the very final act. And stay tuned for more waffle on that at the end. Whew, and that's it, my summary. I did cover everything, right? Oh, yeah. Imagine me making a video on the Sea Devils and not talking about this. For you see, my humble viewers, a wonderful thing happened during the production of this adventure. Well, actually, it's not wonderful. Someone got ill. It was John Baker, who was tasked with scoring the Sea Devils within the BBC Radiophonic Workshop. Because he fell ill, incidental music duties were instead handed over to this man, a Mr. Malcolm Clarke. Oh, Malcolm Clarke, you nutty wizard. The music that you hear in The Sea Devils is like nothing heard in Doctor Who before or would ever be heard again. I wonder if the instructions given to Malcolm Clarke read as nothing other than, "It's the 70s, mate, just get in there and have a good time." A mad scientist locked in a room full of dials, switches and buttons, firing out some of the most outlandish discharges of synth-based sonic jabberwocky with that little melodic touch, achievable with the technology at the time. It goes a huge way to making The Sea Devils something totally unique and all the more memorable for it. A serial where even the exchange of money has its own jingle.
Thank you, miss.
Or where hitting a golf ball sounds like an 8-bit video game. Where the act of picking up a telephone is enough to make the ears bleed. Ouch. The classic recurring incidental chime of doom is the one that you all know. Hope I don't get copyrighted for that. But my personal favourite is this one. The one that sounds a bit like a whimsical cosmic fart. Beautiful. Make no mistake, the soundtrack to The Sea Devils is one of the best strange things in a classic Doctor Who serial. Distracting? Perhaps. Bad quality? No, you're wrong. It's a thing of beauty. Visuals? Check. Sound? Check. Writing? Check. And there it is, folks. Doctor Who in The Sea Devils is everything it could have been and more. Do you know what? Straight up, I was about to do that thing when I filmed myself walking across the field, and I did a little test to see if it was going to be too windy, and it was way too windy, so all you would hear would be that horrible muffled crackling noise, not even just a bit of it, all the way through constantly. Dead annoying, completely untenable. So I thought it'd be funny if I just did a little segment in my own shed, and straight up, genuinely, deadly serious, I think this could sort of make a viable location for Chosen Chimp videos. Maybe if I decked it out a little bit. Got the light coming in from the windows, you know, bit of an echo, but that doesn't matter. So yeah, I think something wonderful has happened here, guys. In the shed with Chosen Chimp. It's got a bit of a nice ring. Tell me if you like that idea in the comments. So I'm here on my own, and at the time of filming this, it's my birthday. I made a few notes. Scrap of paper there. Things that I missed. So cast and crew, nearly everyone got seasickness, except for John Pertwee, because like the creator Malcolm Hulke, he had experience as a sailor, and he served in the Navy, so he was all good. Some of the actors playing the Sea Devils nearly drowned during certain scenes. Glad they didn't. Roger Delgado may or may not have been scared of water, and Katie Manning skinned her hands during the abseiling down the rope scene on the beach, which, man, I hate that. That must have really, really smarted. So yeah, bunch of people suffering for their art. There you go. I'm glad everyone came out of it relatively unscathed. Bit lazy, just writing that on a scrap of paper. But here's the problem. The Sea Devils is chocked with trivia and information, and I tried to cover some of the most interesting bits, but obviously I missed certain things. So if you would like to hit the comments and tell me anything that I missed about the Sea Devils, then please do. I'm sorry, okay? The problem I've got is putting these videos together in a relatively timely manner, which I haven't been doing a very good job of, through no fault of my own, really. It's not through lack of enthusiasm, quite the opposite, in fact. It's through lack of time. Hence the general sparsity with which these videos are published, and I can only apologise for that. I know I have apologised numerous times, and pretty much every time you lovely, lovely people hit the comments and tell me not to worry about it and it's fine and everything. But, you know, when I started this channel, I was putting out one video a week, and that was great, and I would love to go back to that. So I'll tell you what really helps. and I mean this genuinely, is following me on Patreon. For just £1 a month, you can become a distinguished follower and request your classic Doctor Who story or any other Doctor Who related topic within reason for review and coverage by my human self. On this particular occasion, I would like to thank Vacant, that's VACANT, for requesting The Sea Devils, which, if I haven't made it clear enough already, is a story near and dear to my heart. So thank you very much to you for giving me an excuse to waffle on about this story extensively. So, yeah, if you just want to hit that Patreon, £1 a month, and you can request your classic stories, it would help me out greatly and I will be eternally grateful. I am putting some thought to introducing a brand new tier, and more information on that soon, but I think it's probably better to show rather than tell. Don't want to make empty promises. I just want to make good Chosen Chimp content. And thank you very much for your patience. Back to you, Studio Chimp. Well, thanks, you meaty feast. Ooh, I want to wrap you in pastry and gobble you up like a sausage roll. So here we are, bobbing on the sea towards a high-security prison on the English south coast, or more specifically, Fortress Island. There's the fortress there. Actually, Norris Castle, East Coves, the Isle of Wight. The Doctor and Joe are here to visit an old friend who has ditched his satanic robe and heavy metal hand signs for a life of a little more humility, or so he would have you believe. This is George Trenchard, the man in charge, apparently. He assures the Doctor that the Master has caused no trouble, and that the guards here are completely immune to hypnotism, as proven by this honest demonstration, which is definitely not a ruse. I don't know how, if you have the powers to hypnotise, you can fake hypnosis. Not sure how that one works, unless he's hypnotised this guard into pretending that he's not hypnotised. Needs more investigation, I think. Anyway, you know the drill. Like all good incarcerated fictional villains, the Master is controlling things from the inside. And he's got poor Trenchard here wrapped around his little Time Lord Pinky, and he didn't even need to hypnotise him to do it. I mean, for one thing, the Doctor makes a joke about the Master being fat, which is a low blow in itself, and then Trenchard follows up by saying he can't get the exercise, but then you see the Master actually exercising and saying he's trying to keep fit, so that's a red flag right there. But on the whole, the deception holds, at least for the first act, and it sees the Doctor being genuinely, earnestly friendly with the Master, very much like they are old friends. You could almost say that they were at school together. The chemistry between Roger Delgado and Jon Pertwee has been gold dust since day one, and this is one of the best examples. The kind of dimension to their relationship that scenes like this needs to be thankful for. Tangible evidence to the relationship that these two are known to have had since the beginning. The Master tells the Doctor that being in prison has given him time to think. It's an altogether civil exchange, ending with the Master asking the Doctor to come and visit more often, and the Doctor agreeing wholeheartedly to that request. It's almost heartwarming. Oh yeah, I forgot. It's a trick. But the Master isn't the only one hiding ulterior motives. The Doctor is also here to investigate the mysterious sinking of ships, slimy green hands and over-the-top screams galore. And piquing his interest is talk of a scorched lifeboat, and so he bribes this strange jolly extra to take a trip to a top-secret naval base, and he better not treat it like Brighton Beach. Ugh. This is Captain Hart, or as I like to call him, Wet Brigadier. Trust me, he's one of the good ones, he'll grow on you. Nicholas Courtney took a holiday during the production of this story, which wrote off UNIT completely. Instead, you get these black-clad prison guards who are pleasantly UNIT-like in their buffoonery, and real-life Royal Navy soldiers who aren't portrayed as buffoons, as this was a proviso for the Ministry of Defence allowing the BBC to use all their stuff. Despite the Doctor jovially trespassing on naval property like the intrusive dandy that he is to look at this charred lifeboat, it isn't long before him and Captain Hart get on the same page, with the Doctor summarising that these burn marks were made by a concentrated beam of energy. Also, if you draw the lines between the sinking ships, it makes a triangle, and in the centre of that triangle just so happens to be an abandoned sea fort. The Master has acquired similar sea charts courtesy of the endless present giving of Trenchard, and yeah, this scene where he watches the clangers. Never really been able to get my head around it. Does he genuinely think he's watching footage of aliens, or is he saying it seems to be a rather interesting extraterrestrial life form because he's acknowledging the fictional narrative whilst not realising its target audience is children? It's just not made clear. All I know is he really likes watching the clangers. So here's the fort, actually no man's land fort in the Solent near Portsmouth. This was originally built in the 1800s to repel a French invasion that never actually happened. Maybe because of this, I don't know. Current occupants, a jolly Irish man who likes to play games and his paranoid mate. Old Oak Light Ale, that looks nice. Hickman just can't shake the feeling that he's being watched. Clark only jokes and tells him that it's in his head. Boy, is he about to change his tune. By the way, don't underestimate the importance of this character. He literally invents the name Sea Devil. This right here probably wouldn't have had the same clout if it was called Legend of the Eocene. Not that it had a great deal of clout anyway, but I digress. Hickman hears a noise, arms himself with a flare gun and marches straight to his death. Jo, aka this stuntman in a wig, gets herself a bike and catches up with the Doctor, who Captain Hart now decides is mad as a hatter after the Doctor explains that Horatio Nelson was a very good friend of his. So yeah, by all means let that same person take one of your boats out with his young friend to the sea fort where you're conducting all of your solar testing. Suppose you're going to tell me that you want the boat back next, aren't you? It's at the end of the first episode that audiences get their first face reveal of a sea devil, Hickman. Poor Clark, eh? A lot of supporting characters are quick to recover after a traumatic monster experience, but not this guy. Night night, sweet prince. The Doctor comes face to face with a sea devil for the first time. He tries to negotiate and gets shot at. Great wonky corridor shots here, and one of two high quality melting doors to be found in this story, followed up with an explosive rig that sends the meanie greenie packing. Good job Clark was asleep for that. While the Doctor builds a little gizmo that's a radio but it transmits instead of receiving because he reversed all the bits, I think. He explains to Jo that these are the soggy cousins of the Silurians, originally discovered in the caves of Derbyshire. They should actually have been called Eocenes, I'll take his word for it. But these are a different species, perfectly adapted to life underwater. They are conducting these attacks on local ships because they still see man as an ape who got above himself. You got that right, I'm nearly at 3,000, look, woo! Sorry, but serious, I honestly can't fault this creature design. These guys look the biz. Wholly organic, lovely attention to detail. Apparently there was an issue about them being naked, hence the reason for the fishnet outfits, which does kind of add to the effect, I guess. A credible and distinct contrast to the more uniformed stylings of our more mechanised villains of old. And yeah, they sound nuts as well. One of the few things I liked about Legend of the Sea Devils was them bringing back the classic Sea Devil scream for that end fight. Definitely one of my favourite creatures, this. And as the Doctor says himself, they're not animals but intelligent beings. Intelligent earthlings, you mean? So the Doctor gets his gizmo to work, causing the rescue chopper to arrive, well, pretty much instantly. And he should be very proud of this little device. Very proud indeed. Well done, Doctor. Trenchard has bought the Master another present, this time a disguise, only to then have him hide under a blanket in the back of a car. He really is making a mockery of this being a prisoner thing. I love the sneering face he pulls at the real naval officers. And he's infiltrated the naval base so he can build a little gizmo of his own, making fools of the military since the 1970s. When the Doctor spots him while Trenchard talks about golf as an act of diversion, the Doctor decides to, well, play a game of golf. Yes! A hole in the goal. I know nothing about golf. Just as the Doctor realises the whole prison has been compromised, the Master does that, which to me seems like a strange move when he's controlling everyone and can just leave at any time he wants. Anyway, sword fight! Swords outside of a jail cell. You couldn't write it. You know it, I know it, this sword fight is gold dust. So good, they show the whole thing twice. Once at the beginning of episode 2 and again at the start of episode 3. Round 2 with Ainley and Davison? Good, but not as good as this. That face, come on. After adding insult to injury by eating the Master's sandwich, the Doctor instigates the second part of this fight and is fully in the driver's seat, telling the Master that violence will never get him anywhere. Oh, you're a flipping fine one to talk. But ultimately the Master holds the keys to the fortress. We all knew he missed that throw on purpose, and now the Doctor is prisoner, during which time the Master explains his true plans and the reasons for them. Apparently he stole Time Lord files on the Sea Devils. I mean, heaven knows where or when he managed to do that, but what's more surprising is that the Time Lords have files on Earthlings. That's right, Earthlings. But here we are. You see, this prison makes a good base for his operations. He's planning to contact their reptilian friends and wants to help them rule the Earth again. All he wants out of it is the pleasure of seeing the human race exterminated. This I find particularly interesting because, given the complex love-hate of Doctor and Master, amplified in many of the modern Who adventures, I feel we are reasonably able to assume that the Master is doing this just to rub it in the Doctor's face, probably out of petty revenge for getting him imprisoned and depriving him of the opportunity to absorb the powers of an alien god, destroy the Doctor's beloved Earthlings and enjoy the look of anguish on his mug. Let me stress, however, that this concept isn't really implied, but that is how I like to interpret all of this, so yeah. I'll tell you who's kicking ass though, Jo. Look at her go there, and there. She's like a little puppy in this story, following the Doctor wherever he goes. We're talking ultimate companion moves here. That combination of fragility, innocence and total utter fearlessness. Miss Grant at her finest here, folks. People tend to forget that in Jo's case, violence got her pretty much, well, everywhere. Good rescue, sorted. And speaking of people needing rescuing, having moved in from his time working on the wheel, this young Rassilon in the making, Captain Ridgway, has taken his submarine down to the depths of the sea to get some intel on our damp natives, and it doesn't quite go according to plan. This guy gets blasted in the ears and then the whole submarine craps out. Cue melting door number 2, and cue someone being held prisoner incident number... yeah, I've lost count already. It's a pretty civil affair, to be honest. At least at the beginning. The captured crew even give their guard a pet name. Green Gilbert. Pretty sure you couldn't call a sea devil that in this day and age. Look at this thing the Master has built, isn't it cute? It's a sea devil summoner, great for parties. When the Doctor and Jo make a beeline for the sea, the Master chases them with the machine, and Trenchard isn't quite as sold on the cover story that the Master is helping detect enemy agents as he was at the beginning. Well, I mean, the Master sort of told him the truth, except the enemy agents are green and coming out the sea. Ah yeah, this gun, also a work of genius. Discharges a bright flare thing. Doesn't look all that safe for the actors, like Barbara's gun in The Rescue. Anyway, the humans with guns are outmatched because they are, well, humans with guns. Over to the minefield it is then. Pardon me. With the Doctor doing whatever it takes to satisfy his appetite for violence, he progresses from the usual martial arts and smacking people over the head with objects to full-blown pro-wrestling hardcore deathmatch mode. Ouch. Fortifying himself in a minefield and using his trusty sonic to avoid and subsequently trigger the mines means that he can send their chaser packing. Fun explosions on the beach. Satisfied? You should be. The Doctor and Jo go back to Captain Hart and treat themselves to a little beverage. Judging by the bottle, it looks expensive, but I'm pretty sure it's just full of old oak ale. Jo gets given a cheese sandwich, but the Doctor steals it just because that's how he's rolling in this story. She now probably has a taste of the disappointment and anguish suffered by Sergeant Benton at the hands of Captain Yates just 2 stories earlier. Right, we're on episode 4 now. Let's take all those subtleties of the first half of this story, stuff them in a black bag and sling them in residual. The Master's game of Let's Pretend I'm a Prisoner has expired, so now's the time to summon the Sea Devils to the fortress and take out everyone. This scene is genuinely badass. The Sea Devils are savage in their infiltration, destroying communications and everything. I love it. It's not that the guards don't put up a fight, they just don't stand a chance. And that includes poor Trenchard, who plants himself heroically on the front line, remains admirably collected to the bitter end, and even plugs one of them. But yeah, there was only one way this unholy alliance was going to end. It's later presumed that the Master exploited his patriotism and turned it into a weapon. Shame, because he was an honourable chap after all. But I'll tell you who isn't honourable: this crumpet-headed mollusk. Parliamentary Private Secretary Walker. He's a right handful. A certified chin if there ever was one. He's nagging Hart's secretary for breakfast. Eggs, bacon, toast. And then he just carries on nagging.
Call the steward.
Ah, and get me the morning papers, will you? There's a good girl.
You patriarchal bastard. He's come down to sort all the sinking ships out, and his fuddy-duddy bureaucratic brain means that he's the only one to push the big red button on a military strike. And the biggest problem with that at this juncture being that the Doctor is now down there trying to negotiate a peaceful settlement. Diving bell goes down, Doctor. Diving bell comes up, no Doctor. Lovely set here. I mean, what's there not to like? I'm a big fan of this organic pod thing too, except that it has eyes. That's weird. The Sea Devil leader talks for the first time, and his voice sounds like how you'd expect an upright sea creature to sound, all hissy and snake-like, marginally more credible than the Silurians of Derby. It delivers just about line for line what one of the Silurians said about Earth being their planet, reminding us once again that these are not aliens, these are Earthlings, born and bred. And just like the last time, the Doctor puts the concept of sharing the Earth on the table. It's pretty straightforward. Man lives on land, sea devils live in the sea. Storylines like this are the glue that holds the Pertwee era together. Him endeavouring for a peaceful solution, but struggling endlessly to bring both parties on the same page. The Pertwee era nailed this concept, and therefore changed the landscape of Doctor Who storytelling from there on in. The Sea Devils is one of a few premium displays of that. As is the writing, John Pertwee himself is just class. The negotiations seem to gather traction until Weirdy Beardy shows up to pour salt in the Guinness. He's promising to repair their hibernation unit so they can rise up and destroy man. Haha. You incarcerated me, old friend, and now it's my turn. I'm not giving up that theory without a fight. The Sea Devils are just about swayed by the Doctor's argument until... Gee, I wonder how Joe and Walker are getting on.
And do you know what happened? Brigadier Lethbridge Stewart blew the whole lot up.
Maybe, but I bet he didn't do it by risking the lives of his own men.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he did. Walker is ordering Captain Hart to carry out the strike, and so we get some marvellously effective stock footage, I think, and some explosions that will make your eyes rattle. It's all very grim and very well edited, and the music across this scene is amazing. You can't really blame the Sea Devils for suddenly switching to the Master's side of things, what with the ceiling literally coming down on them. Per the Master's advice, they send 2 heroic floaters up to the surface to convince the humans that their attack was successful. As the Doctor escapes and helps free the submarine crew by tapping a Morse code message that presumably says, "Fake a stomach cramp and then grab the Sea Devil." Well, okay, less of the killing though. There's a bit of pushing and shoving as the sub tries to escape. The Sea Devils activate a force field, but the crew fire a torpedo in on themselves to blast their way out. Oh yeah, that's much better. And yep, this is what we were all waiting for. The Doctor staring down this plum Burke. Saying his reference to the national anthem in light of this attack is an extremely insular point of view. Pure fire. At least for the time being, he does actually manage to convince Walker to do the right thing, but the bottle is shook and the lid is off. Final episode battle, here we come. The Sea Devils invade the naval base. The Doctor gets Venusian on their asses before pulling the face, you know the one. But the Sea Devils are in control, just about winning the first round in their war against humanity. The Master plans to activate all of their undersea bases across the world, and needs the Doctor's help to do it. So goes the construction of a brand new gizmo, the Sea Devil Waker Upper. Everyone's playing to their strengths in this finale, with Joe doing the die-hard routine to come to the Doctor's aid, Captain Hart helping however he can, Walker being a whiny pig, the Doctor secretly tinkering with the Master's machine, and the Master himself somehow suddenly being gullible enough to fall for it. The Doctor creates an awful noise that's especially bad if you're a Sea Devil, giving Hart and Joe chance to summon more aid. Yeah, you can just stay in the cupboard, mate. And this is what a classic Doctor Who gunfight looks like. All the crash bang wallops, over the top deaths galore, including of course the vintage somersault off the building, and of course the Navy getting the upper hand. Captain Hart does one better than the standard unit bazooka and uses this thing, and it really does the job. To be fair, Hart's men are only as efficient as the Sea Devils are plausible as life forms. They don't cheat and deflect the bullets, or regenerate or reverse explode. They just die when they get hit. The Doctor... No, don't leave him with a guard. Ugh. Now we get a jet ski chase. Game on. Looks like the Doctor catches the Master for the final time, and... yeah, nice of them to bring the pod at least. If cheddar cheese had a face. Ugh, who let him out the broom cupboard? Walker's completely lost the plot now. Back to talking about nuclear strikes, but now with a more wobbly voice. He doesn't really get any comeuppance in this story, which is a disappointment. He just sits there eating bloody salmon. Does my head in, that guy. That fateful point where the Doctor is victorious but also utterly defeated is when he realises there's nothing he can say to stop the Sea Devils from destroying the Earth, which means he has to push a secret big red button of his own. He only went and reversed the polarity of the neutron flow, another first in Doctor Who lore, causing a reverse feedback to their whole power system. You can't switch it off either, that just makes it worse. He even says I'm sorry beforehand. The Master suggests that they dispose of the Doctor, but then the Sea Devils order them both to the cages. The Master was a prisoner, the Doctor was a prisoner, now they're both prisoners. Just give everybody psychic paper already. At least these two are on the same page now. Get out in 10 minutes or die. Anyway, they know full well they'll get a chance to take vengeance / incarcerate each other later down the line. Look at them bobbing on the sea there. Looks fun. The Sea Devils try to switch off the overloading device, but it only makes things worse. That is an explosion. And that, distinguished followers, is what a double fail for the Doctor looks like. You can't have a Silurian-based Doctor Who story without a closing shot of the Doctor looking like that. Firstly, because the natives of the planet which he loves so much had to die again, and secondly, because his dear old friend the Master adhered to his own secret motto: always bring a spare face. And at the start of the story, the Doctor said this would be his permanent residence. Come off it now. I'm sat on a very low chair. Don't know what to tell you. It's a work in progress. So the thing that kind of falls flat a little bit for me is that this is arguably the most emotionally intense part of the story. And then it just ends very suddenly. I mean, this is pretty much identical to the closure that we got in the Silurians, in that the Doctor kind of loses by failing to protect one of the parties involved in this war between humans and reptiles, both of which are native Earthlings. So I was hoping that the Sea Devils would give a little more bang for its buck in this regard, especially as it's a double blow for the Doctor. Not only does he have to kill the Sea Devils himself, but he also loses the Master. The Master escapes again. All of that stuff he did was for naught. So, which is fine, and that's great because it's good drama, but instead you just get this kind of vacant expression and then it ends. I don't know, they could have rounded that off a little bit better, seeing as there's not even a mention of it in the next episode. I think there could have been some sort of parting of ways there. You know, like, remember when he says goodbye to Joe and there's that really sad scene of him getting into Bessie and driving off? Just a little thing, but it kind of ties it all up. Instead, we get him looking moody. But then again, maybe that is the good ending. It's in the great tradition of classic Doctor Who stories involving Silurians, I suppose, because the same thing happens in Warriors of the Deep, which had an excellently bleak ending. Especially excellently bleak, considering that story had a pantomime horse painted green. You know, Peter Davison with his black eyes and his bruised face saying there should have been another way. Yeah, these stories are destined to end sadly, and that's what's good about them. Just, I think, a couple more seconds on that story would have made all the difference. But hey, that's my only complaint, really. I love the Sea Devils. It's a great story, one of my favourites, and I hope you enjoyed it too. Tell me all the stuff you loved about the Sea Devils in the comment section, and like I said before, if there's anything I missed about this, please let me know. Otherwise, don't forget to hit subscribe, and have a good one.